Welcome to Proudly Made in Africa, the podcast that amplifies voices shaping the continent's future through innovation, resilience, and insight. I'm your host, Raj Mavrik, and today we're diving into an exciting intersection: how anthropology is influencing and improving Africa's health system. And joining us today is Mr. Fernandos Ongolly, a distinguished anthropologist with extensive experience in medical anthropology, behavioral science, and health innovation. See, Fernandos has conducted impactful research on HIV prevention, the adoption of health technologies, and community-based healthcare systems. So today, I'm excited because we will explore how cultural context shape healthcare interventions in Africa, the lessons learned from his work with PrEP rollout in Kenya, and what anthropology can teach us about designing health systems that truly serve communities. So welcome to the Proudly Made in Africa podcast. It's really a privilege to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Maverick.
In terms of the current landscape in African society, the continent as a whole, where would you say, business is standing? Is there any major progression, any major success that you've been able to witness or at least observe in terms of the role anthropologists are playing in the businesses in Africa?
I think the first thing that I can say is technology is really advancing. And when technology advances, like availability of good internet, availability of good road networks, it's making the continent to be very, very small. And, there's lots of stories. And this is where, again, anthropologists to contribute again in pushing stereotypes through ethnographic inquiries, For instance, an ethnography of the Hausa people, So through these stories that are told by anthropologists and scholars who have actually conducted research about things like, cannibalism, things like, funeral rights and, birth rights and all these sorts of cultural things. Sometimes this is misunderstood by other people in the continent, like witchcraft and all these sorts of things that Africans will actually look at as negative things.
Yeah.
Such kind of things have been misunderstood initially because of the reader's perspective versus the writer's perspective. And this was because most of the anthropological inquiry that was taking place for a very long time was from more of an outsider perspective. So they were foreign anthropologists. So the good thing is that anthropology as a discipline is really growing in Africa. And there are so many African anthropologists right now who can actually conduct research from inside a perspective and who have the cultural understanding of the continent. And they can actually, they really understand the cultural meanings of all the practices and all that. So they are able to tell these stories in a way that is very authentic and in a way that actually the stories are told in ways that should actually be told, So I'll give you a very good example of, let's say, medicine, the advancement that traditional medicine has actually contributed to. And most countries in Africa right now are also adopting traditional medicine as alternative for mainstream healthcare, because the traditional medicine was looked at by most Africans as witchcraft, But now, through anthropological inquiry and especially by anthropologists themselves who are African anthropologists, we have been able to understand how these medicines are they are actually administered, under which cultural practices, what kind of rights that people have to go through when these medicines are administered. And that has just become a business, and it's a certain business that is actually growing, fast growing in Africa. And there are some places in Africa where we know that they are very good for traditional medicine. Like you see in Asia, like countries like Bhutan, traditional medicine is part of the healthcare system. And we want to see an Africa whereby even the national health insurance schemes can actually fund people who are accessing traditional medicine, you know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm curious because when we look at back then, when the Western society utilized the power of anthropologists in understanding the cultures in Africa, right? They benefited massively from that. Now, where do you see African business landscape or the critical landscape heading? Should Africans businesses focus on supplying to Africa, or should they focus on supplying to the rest of the world? So should they focus on really dominating, at least increasing that dominance in the global market space?
One thing that you need to know is that as we speak right now, Africa is one of the biggest continents and is one of the fastest growing in population in terms of the young population. And probably in the next 10, 20 years, let's say a third of the world will be, filled with Africans. You know, what does it tell you from a business perspective is that there's a market. Everything that we sell, and from a very, from a, when you look at it, is if it's coffee that we are selling, for instance, coffee, they are sold as beans from Kenya and they are flown somewhere and they come back as coffee in glass bottles and they are sold 10 times the price, that will have been down in the country. So the very first thing is the understanding, like through a discipline like anthropology, we have been able to tell stories that have made African people actually to really understand their history. That's the first thing. Number two, to understand their culture and how we are actually related. Like you see, categorizing communities, categorizing cultures, like the Bantu people, the Kushites, the Nilotic people. We have been able to categorize these people. Then from history, we just realize that these lines that are cut and we call boundaries and we call our countries, they're actually not countries. They're actually just politically motivated geographical spaces. So this new understanding or this new knowledge makes it easier for us to look beyond our borders and to have one continent, you see. So the biggest challenge is doing business in Africa is like I watched a certain video and Dangote himself, one of the richest man in Africa, so
Yeah.
needed a visa actually, needs a visa to travel in most of the African countries, like 34 countries. But this is political. But when you look at it, if we change our mind and we look at it from a cultural perspective, we are Africans, and we are one people, and the people that we are we are people who belong to one culture. So we could
Yeah.
do business within first, because it's very expensive actually to ship. It's very expensive to ship your products to Europe or to America. Yet you can just ship your product to your neighbor, Gambia, if you are in West Africa, or Uganda if you are in East Africa. So you can start doing regional business and expand, because most of the time you ship these things, you're shipping the cocoa, the cacao beans. You ship them. They go to Switzerland. They come back as chocolate. So they are sold to your neighbors. So these are skills that with the internet you can learn on how to make these things, and you can make them locally and start selling in the local market.
I like what you said. So if anyone didn't, really articulate that, I hope they can rewind that back, because for me, what I'm hearing is the markets is really getting ripe in Africa. You don't necessarily feel the critical aspect right now is focusing on the logistics of exporting to Western, say Western Africa, Western Europe, or Europe as a whole, because a lot of Africans complain that the logistics aspect is really challenging, and that is one of the reasons they are not able to scale. But secondly, many African uh, products are not sold as products, final product, they're sold as commodities. So, like you said, they sell the cocoa out, it comes back as a finished product. Why are we not focusing on completing the whole value chain so that we have the final product within Africa. And now the branding can have some power because it seems like the anthropologists really help the branding power of the Western companies, obviously, sell well because they understand. For instance, I've seen Nestle have so many subsidiaries where in Nigeria they're selling it as Nunu, they're selling it as Street Crown or something. In another African country, they're selling it with a different name. It's still Nestle, but now they have found a way to, communicate to those people that this is your local.
because it is acceptable. It is something that you need. It's being packaged in such a way that it looks like it's yours, yet it's not yours.
Exactly.
You,
Exactly.
you get what I mean? I want to give you a very good example. And sorry if Ugandans are listening to this. I did not mean to use this example, but Uganda has a very good electric cars manufacturing. They call it Kira Motors, one of the Uganda's companies. But to be honest, and Ugandans will listen to this and they can go to the comment section and later on really clarify on this. I am not so sure what percentage of the company is actually owned by Ugandans themselves, because the buses that they're actually producing, they call it, I think they call it Kayola bus, something like that. It's a very authentic Ugandan name, and it has to be convincing, and you might actually think this is actually ours because
Yes.
we even our local terms.
Yes.
But you see how now the role of understanding a people's culture and a people's behavior actually come in when it comes to business. Because now they use these names, they use these local names that make you feel like, oh, this is actually ours. And there's so many products that, even when it comes to the advertising and just brands, like I don't know if in Nigeria there's Blueband.
Yeah, very, very strong.
Yeah, when you look at Blueband and you look at even the advertising, you see at the package and you see, oh, this is a young Kenyan boy, and it really feels like it's actually yours. There's a Netflix documentary that is trending right now. Like I just started watching it yesterday. I'm sorry, maybe I forgot the title, but it's talking about consumerism and how they make these products so easy for you to actually get and accept them, and really like you really need them, yet you really don't need them. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was offering to buy this friend, dinner, and I said, "Oh, can I buy for you dinner?" And the question was, "Oh, but I thought you told me you're broke. How you gonna?" But I said, like, it depends with what you like. What do you want to eat? You want to eat rice? Yes, but you eat rice in Radisson Blue. You eat boiled rice, the same boiled rice that you eat at what is this Nigerian supplier, Mama Shi?
Mama Africa or something.
Mama Shi, African cuisine. Mama Shi will sell a bowl to you at 10 euros. Radisson Blue will sell the same bowl of boiled rice to you at
40. Yes.
But now what you're buying? You're buying the brand, So then they convince you and they get into your head by telling you actually this is yours, this belongs to you. They put an African name there and oh, this is ours.
So, do you feel like there are certain things that are general human behavior, not necessarily African, that, it's already globally understood in business? For instance, someone goes to the shop and he sees two different products, right? The same product, sorry, but different brands. One is 25 euros cheaper than the other. And somehow he believes that the one that is more expensive is more quality and the cheaper one is less quality. Are these things specific to Africans or Europeans, or they're just general human, ideologies, or how I call it, perceptions? So I'm just curious.
Mavrik, me and you know that most of the clothes that we put on come from Bangladesh, and we know very well that I'm putting on a chain sweater here. This sweater could be easily be manufactured by the same manufacturer who has manufactured one for Zara. or so it's a very it's like let me tell you, when it comes to this game, I think from my understanding, it's a very African way of doing things,
Mm.
because expensive things come with a certain form of prestige, you know, and and it is even worse in the diaspora,
Okay.
because then you are trying to find a certain position that you have lost while
Mm.
you are back at home, Like back at home, I have 50 goats. I have 50 goats. I have 300 chicken. And who cares about that?
Mm.
In a world of Lamborghinis and Teslas and all that, you know. So that tells you one thing, that context really matters. You know,
Mm.
if you have a pen there, do you have a calculator? Do you know how much a camel is? One camel, it's
No. Oh,
1,000.
sir,
A
a
camel,
thousand. Wow.
yes, even more. Some camels, they're as high as $2,000. One camel. So there's a guy somewhere in northern Kenya who has 100 of those things. And here is myself um, working for a big university, prestigious position. My salary is not even 3 camels per month.
Actually, I know what you mean with that. That's very 100% true. Because even I can relate to Nigerians where, like, doing farming business and making millions in naira. Meanwhile, even they might look at you as, oh, you're living this prestigious life because you're living abroad, or you have a relationship with so and so people. So do you think it's something to do with the colonial root that has been infused within the African system right from time, or this is just something that is generalized? So we're talking about in India, maybe people feel the same way as well, not just Africans.
So there's no generalization in these things, just a culture of a people and how they behave. And just even their buying behavior is totally different. Like, you come from Nigeria, I will assume, and even in Nigeria, there's a certain community of people who like posh things,
Mm.
you know, and Nigerians, basically among the African communities, you like fancier things than the rest of Africa. You like cool things, and so it's more of a cultural, the Ghanaians and their gold and all that, and these things, culture is actually shaped by the environment. For instance, like the food culture, what will determine what you eat is what is available and accessible to you. You live close to a river or a lake, you become a fisherman, and
Mm.
that is what you'll be eating mostly. Myself, I don't like fish so much because I grew up very far from the sea, like almost 15 hours by bus. So then I don't eat any fish that comes from the sea. I only eat tilapia, which comes from the lake. You know,
Mm.
so the environment where you are best, like the environmental, the context now, the physical context really matters, because it's the one that determines what is available for you and what you can actually access so easily. So you see, like the gold, like the Ethiopians and the coffee, their land is so good. Like when it comes to coffee and all that, and you know, and it's so for them it's so easy to access this and to come up with, to live with this culture and to grow within this culture of coffee as a practice. It's not just in Ethiopia. You don't just walk in a cafe, buy a coffee and go. It's more of a
Right.
social activity. So then the same behavior is actually translated into even business, you see. That's why you get now certain communities will be attracted to gold items, and they are likely to buy gold items compared to other communities, because some of us do not understand the value of this stone. Like, why should I care about shiny things that I'm wearing? But this man from Ghana is more likely to be putting on a chain, a golden chain, and they'll be very happy about that. But tell another one about, let's say, beads that come from the sea. They will relate so easily, with that. So it's more of the 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 environment determines what is available, and it also influences the artifacts. So these are physical material culture that you actually have. And these businesses, most of the time, it's just exchange of physical material culture. It is exchange of these clothes that we put on. There are so sorts of pieces of arts that have been culturally designed, and we have designed this one, and we know the African people like this one, the Indians like this one. Then we sell to them.
In terms of politics, we can kind of separate it from the business a little bit. So what I mean is you did mention that business in Africa, for instance, would benefit massively if we switch perspective to seeing Africans above the boundaries, so now you see more market opportunities. But in terms of politics, I think maybe the opposite is the case because a lot of people would argue that there is an agenda by certain governments, not just in Africa, but globally, different factions or sections like the US, where they want to separate people. They want to pit people against each other. Say racism, you're black, you're white. Cultural in Africa, you're Yoruba, you're Hausa. This is your people, that is your people. Why do you see this to be something that is still happening till today? And what benefit do you think it is to those who are really pushing that narrative?
I might be confused as a devil's advocate by saying this is, if you can unite as a culture for the benefit of your culture, then well and good. Because even colonization, that's and civilized new civilizations come up because the Hausa people unite and they conquer by selling their culture to the rest. Marry the people from the other communities and assimilate them. So they only sell material culture, but also the other intangible things. They sell, like right now. You Maverick, can you tell me one Swahili song that you know?
No.
You don't know any Swahili song, but I usually sing for you. Ada Ada by
Mm,
Kevin Wabano. So
mm,
easy. I can sing for you songs by Chike and all that because you see the Nigerians have taken this Western way of trying to sell their culture through music and through movies and all that. So they show us how great their culture is through
mm,
through cinema and these kind of things. So that is normally a way of trying to, you know, you try to get into people's minds other cultures, and you are conquering. That is conquering and colonizing us with your music. You get into a Kenyan nightclub and they just hearing 70% playing Nigerian music. We were not forced to do that, but it's just little by little. So even if a Kenyan musician wants to sing, they want to start singing like a Nigerian, yet they're Kenyan. It's because you're so great in this thing. So then, therefore, if a people can unite, if Nigerians can unite with this agenda to sell their culture across Africa, I don't see any problem with that. The only problem is, because culture is very dynamic, you know, it keeps on changing, and even new religions come in, new technology come in, and it's part of life. If there's interaction between the Ugandans and the Kenyan and a new culture emerges, like it's just part of life. But now the problem is politics, because now politics mostly for me it's an agenda that is normally pushed just by the few elites, and sometimes you might be blaming other governments and other countries and all that, but the problem is within, you know, because let me tell you, if you have a house and somebody tells you, oh, the neighbor does not want our house to look clean, so the neighbor just wants us to be fighting. So why can't you stop fighting in your own house so that you can team up against the neighbor? And the neighbor comes in and they see actually these people are cleaning and they're working together. So it's a way of finding a common ground where you can actually work together, something common. You know, it might be something beyond race, because the continent in itself is very big, and there are people from, they say, different colors, from different walks of life, different cultural. It's a melting pot of culture. Most people think of Africa when you say, "Oh, I'm African." They think of it reminds me when the first time I went to Spain and I was going to watch a match between Real Madrid and Victoria Pleasant, and it was my first time I was going into a football pitch and a proper one, a proper football pitch.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And I was on the tram and I was so excited about this, and I was recording a video. Then there was this woman who was also very excited and behind me like, oh, I'm really going, I'm so happy, I'm so excited. I asked her, oh, you've never seen this thing? Just because she didn't look black, so I assumed she's not African. She said, no, I have never been to Europe. My first time in Europe. I'm from South Africa. So we need to look at Africa beyond just color, black and white.
Yeah.
Because they're Indian Africans, they're Arab. The North is full of, like the people in Egypt, like.
Yeah.
So if we look at Africa, on the first thing, what brings us together? Our geography, right? Number two, what cultural practices bring us together as a continent? Number three, is there a way of abolishing these borders? Is there a problem? My wife was asking me, so the people of Nigeria, how are they called?
Nigerians.
Nigerians and Nigerians.
Oh, you mean Niger? Oh, I know what you mean.
What about Nigeria?
Niger, so Nigerians, I think. Yeah. That's true. That's very true.
What's the difference between you people fight over things like jollof rice?
Ghana, Nigeria.
Jollof rice and Nigerian jollof rice. Why can't you package it and sell it to the world and tell them, now we have a variety of jollof rice? The same way they sell to us and say, this is Pepsi, this is Coca-Cola.
Very true.
This is Fanta, and the Irish one. What's the name of the Irish one?
Yeah, club soda. Yeah, they have club soda and free cola. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting take, actually. So, what's the benefit to the politicians or governments that want their people, distracted by these differences that we have?
It's a very complex topic. It needs, I think, a political scientist. I'll find one. I'll bring it to you.
I wouldn't mind that. I'm just asking you from your own perspective as well, because as someone who has gone through school systems, you have conversations with people, your role as well, I'm pretty sure you've been affected by the power of government one way or the other. And I'm not sure how vested you are in the American society, for instance, but one thing I've seen is their culture affects the Europe culture very very fast in a way. So something that they start doing there, once it gets normalized there, the Europeans pick it up, and somehow Africans still tend to be reserved, but it still transitions into Africa. So it's like a process. So I'm always curious, what do you think about the reasons why people are separate? Because it seems like a new agenda has been there, at least before Trump's victory. But we're talking about transgenderism. They're trying to delete the whole idea of men and female. So many differences were happening in the US, for instance. And I'm just curious, what was your take on all that?
It takes me back to the same thing that I was saying, that culture is very dynamic. Because you see now Trump will come in and things will change totally. And now with technology, the person who has the technology is the one who is. Technology is becoming the primary tool of colonization. And I'm just saying, like, if any African is listening to this is how Nigeria is colonizing the rest of Africa. Because, like, when you watch those Nigeria movies, and you're seeing, like, very posh houses and all that, they will not show the slums of the floating cities, the floating slums of Nigeria.
In Lagos, yeah.
They will not show the small buses, the yellow buses, that nobody will show you the bad ones. They'll show you the good ones. They'll not show you the very bad academy. They'll show you the good ones. They will not show you about crime and all that. And when you see how these cultural agendas were being pushed to other places, in trying to portray, for instance, America and this hero through the movies. When you see any movie, there's a villain and there's a hero. The hero is always this American troop that is coming to save the world. You see? So the same thing now that is happening right now, like why can't with all this technology that we have, now we can push our own agendas. We can sell our cultures. Like why should you have a mobile phone and with the internet down on the continent, for instance? And why can't you put a mobile phone in front of you and do this is it in West Africa there is this thing that looks like a broom that dances around.
What's it called? I've forgotten the name. I know I have a picture of it in my head though.
That thing. Why can't you record that thing and sell to the world rather than standing in front of of the video and doing Gangnam stuff as a challenge? Why can't you do other like African challenges and all that things that people can actually learn about our continent? Because most of the time we are the ones who are selling the continent in the bad way. Because we are the ones who have the cameras with us. Because we cannot blame Al Jazeera, we cannot blame BBC anymore. Because we have the cameras, we have the technology now. You can go somewhere in rural Mozambique and record a video of a farmer who is really doing so well and who is doing great. You can go somewhere in rural Namibia and record how mining is taking place, and how resources are there and how other Africans can actually take advantage of that resources. But who knows about that,
I think there are some done though, but maybe not on a massive. It's not being scaled or shared as powerful. So, for instance, it would be about the platform we're talking about. If we create something and it doesn't fit the main agenda that those platforms will want to push, then they will kind of shadow ban you. Because I might do some research online and I'll find a YouTube video that somebody is really speaking the truth. He's trying to make people aware, but that video doesn't have views, it doesn't have engagement. And you be curious, do people not find this interesting? Or maybe the algorithm of those platforms don't want you to see it. So it's almost like even though you have the innate wish to do these things, you are not empowered to do it. So maybe Africa should be thinking about platform agendas as well, creating new platforms that really share this whole thing.
I'll give you a very good example, like YouTube, for instance. Is there any equivalent of YouTube on Africa? In Africa, I mean.
I wouldn't think so. I'm sure there are some platforms, from African place, but nothing obviously come close to the scale of YouTube.
Yes, but you see, something towards that scale, even if it's government backed, would have easily happened, even by the African Union. They say,
Yes.
this thing, and if you want anything, you want to post anything here, put it there.
Yeah.
You won't do that because now it will be again fair competition and all that, and the world will be coming against you because now the same people who are running these big platforms are the ones who are giving you money for development and all that.
Yes.
So they want you to continue getting the fish from them.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so they come,
Mhm.
they take the fish in your neighborhood and they bring it to you, and that's the relationship that works.
Well, but that's also a victim mentality for us, which we need to shake if we do have it consistently. But I feel like Africans are empowering themselves, obviously through technology. Like you said, we don't seem to be shying away from technology. Even on the global space, you can see the professions being empowered. Like I'll say, there are a lot of new people right now getting jobs from Africa, not even relocating, but they are working remotely all the way from Africa. So you can see that means people in Africa that have opportunity to leverage technology are utilizing it. So it's happening. But I'm curious about how anthropologists are utilizing these technologies. So before, you guys, I would assume, go to society, go to communities and do interviews, stay with these people to understand how they're living. Today, how are you guys utilizing this technology to really understand cultures?
You see, the first thing is, you see, I'm here. Are you in Dublin?
Yeah, no, I'm not in Dublin right now, but I'm in Ireland.
You're in Ireland. You see, you're not in
Yes.
Dublin, but you're in Ireland. You see, we are in different locations, but we are able to talk and
Yes.
preach the gospel of the discipline. Yeah, you see. So through such platforms like this ones, we are able to actually, make people understand about the discipline. That's the first thing. The second thing very traditional methods of anthropological inquiry, like ethnography, has now grown into adapting into technology. And there are other methodologies like ethnography, auto-ethnography, where I don't really have to go to, like I'm here in Ireland, I really don't have to travel all the way to like the Central African Republic to really conduct my anthropological inquiry. I can do it online. You know, I can find people through social media and through other modalities and actually interview them. You know, and we can actually talk and we can actually really do the same thing that I would have done apart from observation. There are communities, online communities, like their WhatsApp groups, their Facebook groups, their Twitter forums, and all that. You can as well conduct your anthropological inquiry, like do that. Like for instance, in an African WhatsApp group, just join and try to see the conversation that is going on there. You're able to collect data and also analyze your data and give feedback back to the system. So we are actually adapting to these new technologies, also video recording and all that. Because the good thing with video and audio, with all these technologies, that you can play back. Because you see, traditionally anthropologists will go to the field and you're taking field notes. But when you're recording videos here and there, then what happens is that if you really missed out on something, you can actually play back. And you can play back and seek the opinion of an expert. The people that we call cultural experts, they are people who understand that culture more than, you might have interpreted it from an outsider perspective. You see, like the broom, the dancing thing. Until last week, I used to think there is no human being down there.
Oh, yeah.
So then you see, if you have such kind of material, you can actually take to somebody and tell them, listen, I'm doing research on this thing. I need to understand this. This is what I understood when I was there in the field. And you can do triangulation, and you can use other ways of trying to confirm your data.
So in this phase that you are in, what are your focus on? Because I can say there's so many things happening. So I won't ask you what are all the things that are, culturally making wave right now in Africa, but I'll say what are really your own focus within the African space right now. What do you see is popping up? What do you see is on the rise, and what is on the decline in Africa?
I think in Africa, there's very big networking, and as I said, just because of technology now, so there's inter-country communication is better. So it's easier for people to make friends beyond their borders, to do businesses with, because if you make a friend, then you understand the other. You understand the other, then you get new business opportunities, So that is something that is actually on the rise. What is we are a little bit behind, or is I have not seen any clear, involvement, especially in AI.
Okay.
Yeah, because you see, even whatever I was talking about, also AI plays a very key role in how business is run and how businesses are run. There are logarithms that you're talking about. Those are logarithms, those machines, they are not self-taught. There's somebody behind these computers who is feeding certain codes, And if Africans are not involved in this, like in the AI development of, AI models and all that, then our perspectives will be left behind, and the models will be programmed the machine will be taught in a way that is not culturally appropriate. That is not. It doesn't also capture the way of life on the continent. You see, if the bots and all that, all bots will be developed from outside the continent. But are the people on the continent also having do they have a clear AI agenda? Because machine learning, like you're just teaching these robots, and when you teach these robots, you also need to feed it with your ways of life. Otherwise, you'll be consuming and the algorithms. Our if it's business, we will never see any African business recommended by AI or it's because it's not there. Because it's for me, AI is garbage in, garbage out. So we need to give this thing with our garbage, the African garbage, so that all the garbage that is there within AI, it's also, it's representative enough.
But does that say that we don't have good information about Africa on the internet? Because most of these AI algorithms would need to be taught, programmed using the already read present information online. So even if I, for instance, build a new AI model today, the best place I'll get my information from, because I don't have a company that is $1 billion that can, that has customer base that I can pull data from. So I'll go to the internet, I'll go to Twitter archive, I'll pick up conversations from there, depending on the AI model I'm building. But I'm assuming most of those information will still be picked up from the internet already. So are we saying like and obviously, yes, you're going to optimize it way better. So if I'm coming from an African perspective, I'll obviously optimize it. Maybe it says Yoruba culture is one language, and I'm like, no, we actually have so and so. So I understand where you're coming from, but I'm just curious if we don't have a good quality of information about the African, African knowledge on the internet already.
The same stereotypes that were there in the same social media hula baloo that has been written about the continent is the same one that will be consumed by AI. And that's talking about garbage in, garbage out. Because garbage is most garbage that has not been written by, all these stories and all the negative stories about war in Somalia, war in, I don't know if you have ever I've had a friend of yours and then, they say, oh, there's travel advisory to Nigeria because there are elections.
No, interesting.
Like travel advisory to some African country because of this and this terrorism and all that. There are some countries that are still categorized as, red zones, for traveling and even tourism, even when you try to, and you see it's the AI that will also advise so many sectors, like the insurance sector. You'll be trying to buy insurance, but you want to travel to a certain country and the insurance will be so high because of the stories that this AI, the bots have gathered online, and they categorize country as a very high risk country.
Yeah.
So that's where journalism also came in, and the content that is available online also has a very big negative influence in the future of the continent when it comes to the development of artificial intelligence.
Africa is filled with a lot of brilliant minds. But I think the thing that I caught from your conversation is most of those people have been borrowed into this big conglomerate that are under the umbrella of Western companies. So let's say the Western company training the AI in the Western way, the actual engineer is an African. Like I've seen that happen many times. Do you understand? But he doesn't have the power to implement his own ideas fully. He's just working based on instructions. But in many industries in the world, we see African minds there making headways. So obviously we need help in in the government sectors in terms of pushing home-based technological progress. But where do you see this attention really being pinpointed to? Should we focus on the government, applying pressure on the government to help that, or should we look at other means, maybe go funding, peer funding ideas, looking for grants from Western companies? What do you think is the best ways for Africa to really leverage the opportunity coming now from technology and AI?
You understand our government and our politicians. To be honest, you'll come to realize like 70% of the politicians might not even understand what AI is. And out of the 70%, like 50% might not even know that it actually affects them. And maybe even 25% might not even have ever heard the word AI, or they had, but they have never,
Mm-hmm.
when you rely on politicians, they're relying on a very wrong group of people whose interests are just to accumulate wealth and also to be in power and stick in power. They will do all they can to be in power, even if it means that you get funding from somewhere outside, so that you can continue being in power. We cannot rely on aid from outside the continent to develop something in-house, because all these sorts of, there's nothing that comes for free. Even this podcast, it does not come for free. As I told you, there is some expectation after this. It could be directly from me, but it might be from somewhere else, and all of us are trying to meet certain deliverables and certain goals. So then when it's peer-led, and these are the only people who understand the why they should be doing, whereas others just know what are we doing, but why should we really be working on an AI model that is culturally understanding? You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So then if it's peer to peer, is it, what are you bringing this? What kind of resources are you bringing together? Are you bringing money together? Are you bringing skills together? Are you bringing technology together? Then it's easier and that way. But there's no way you'll get money from company X and you expect this company not to have a say on what you are making or how you are making your things. And lastly, me and you are privileged to be based in different contexts, and we are based abroad, and where you are, that is where your daily bread comes from. If you're working, assuming you're working for some big multinational like an IT company, if your boss says jump, will you sit?
Oh my God.
Yeah. If they say sit, you sit, because they are the ones who pay you there. Will you bring the politics of, I need to make this model to be very friendly to? It's about the profit. It's about the money. It doesn't bring money. We don't care about it. We want something that will bring money tomorrow.
But shouldn't that now come to a point where we have gotten to the points? Most of these companies, they're billion-dollar companies. It shouldn't, like, they need to have a higher purpose above profits, and so it should be profit and purpose. That's my argument, obviously. But I'm curious, do you think, because someone mentioned to me that the CEOs are not coming with the intention of, I want to cause problems and just make profits for my shareholders. They just lack awareness of knowing, no, this company needs a direction where we have purpose that is globalized for maybe the African context, European context, and the like. So where do you see the real issue is? Do you think do you also agree it's a thing of ignorance where they just lack awareness, or you think most of these companies just have that one sole purpose, profit above all moral other purposes?
I think profit.
Mm.
In do you know there's a bulb that has been on for more than 100 years right now? A bulb. And in 1925, all the companies that make bulbs came together and they decided, how can we make bulbs that they can actually light for less than 2,000 hours? Because if we make a bulb that can actually work for a lifetime, then people will not come back and buy. So let's make a bulb that can after 1,000 hours it blows up, so that you go back to buy another.
And do you think there was no other reason why they made that bulb? Like, for instance, I'm saying the bulb that can last 100 years, maybe it's so much more expensive, and then they needed to make a bulb that was way cheaper for people.
It's profit. It's profit. Do you think all these phone companies, all the telecommunication companies, do they care where the gold comes from and the condition under which the people are mining the gold?
True.
Do they care about that? all these companies that are having all these minerals and people who are mining in very bad conditions. Do they care about the conditions under which these minerals are being mined? All that matters to them is when the gold is actually in that phone, you know, and the phone has been sold for the 1,500, you know. Nobody
Yeah.
cares about that. So for them, it's the best way to maximize on the profit.
But isn't that also a direct threat to the sustainability of that business when you know that the person you're taking advantage of might one day wake up to, because it's not a beneficial situation for them long term. If my condition are not getting better and all you I'm seeing you making all this money, eventually one day there's a possibility of this person waking up and not having to do any business with you anymore. So if these companies are building generational wealth, should it, like, don't they have some type of plan for sustainability in the future?
Sometimes the best way to think as a businessman is, let's take advantage before this person wakes up. Let's make sure that we maximize on what we are milking before the person wakes up. Because anyway, even if we are doing it in the right way, one day the person will wake up and this person will be our competitor. So the fact that we are talking about sustainability and all that, it doesn't matter that at one point this person will wake up. And that's how civilizations are. Like, they do change. Like today, it is us tomorrow. So while it is our turn to eat, let's eat as much as we can.
And then they evolve in the future.
Wake
Yeah.
up. Because if the ones who are sleeping wake up, then we will not find an opportunity to eat.
You make a very strong point there, because I've seen a lot of companies that, you know, they were once maybe trading in a certain product, and then when the tides changed, all they did was they rebranded and changed the business, and they're still staying on top. So, example, Unilever was once called Trading Company of Nigeria, selling different types of products, and they were part of, like, right from the time during the slave trade and everything. But today they are seen as this very philanthropic company, helping the people, selling certain products. So you're very right there, where people don't see that these companies also have plan Bs of their next phases, where they would evolve because they have the money, they have the network and the strategies to back their new phase. So actually, I usually used to think maybe they have a second phase where they're planning of at least helping the person they're milking, somehow, so that the business grows for as long as possible. But it doesn't seem to be the case, because right now in Africa, a lot of places are suffering from heavy deforestation. We're talking about the coffee industry, the tea industry. And I've always thought that, don't these companies have a plan for their business to last hundreds and hundreds of years? But if this country that you're taking advantage of has nothing else to offer, what is going to happen to your company? But now I see you mentioned something about that.
Why should my business last for 150 years, yet I have only 30 years to live?
Mm.
Do you think the entire company will not be here? We might not need this company at all. I'll give you a very good example. Kodak. Who needs
Mm.
who needs a film to take a photo right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So while people still need films to take photos, let's maximize on the profit. While people still need to drink soda in a bottle, let's maximize on the profit. While plastic is still acceptable, let's sell in as much plastic as we can, because plastic is easy to transport and it's lightweight. You use less fuel to move cars when they're carrying plastics and all that. Because it will come a point when we will not need this product.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the before the mobile phones came, all the wires, all the cables for the telephone, where did they go? Boom, just disappeared. So let's maximize on this profit before the times change. That is how businesses think.
Wow, very insightful. Thank you so much. I was going to ask you, what's your vision for Africa in the next 10 years or longer? For a better Africa, what do you imagine for it?
For me, I will imagine an Africa that is borderless. It is so disappointing, and I'm so not happy that I have visited more European countries than African countries. Yet I have lived in Africa more than I've lived in Europe. So an Africa that is borderless, even for business, it's easier within because you know actually what you can buy from your neighbor and come sell home, or you know what you can go sell to your neighbor. So basically, let's expand the African markets by having, or even if it's not the whole continent, but just these regional blocks, the East African community. How do you call the West African one?
The West African ECOWAS.
The ECOWAS,
Yeah.
IGA,
Yeah.
all that, and
Yeah.
COMESA, this kind of things. Uh, so if we have these regional blocks, at least you're expanding the market rather than rather than trying. Sometimes they say it's so difficult for you flying from Nairobi to Lagos. It might be cheaper to fly from Nairobi into Amsterdam than Lagos than direct.
Very true.
And the reason
Very
is
true.
because when you're thinking as an African and you're thinking, oh my God, I need visa to go to Nigeria, and I need, then that is out of your travel bucket list. Over here in Ireland, and I hope the Kingdom of Morocco is listening, we have money. The Africans in the diaspora, we have money, you know. So, and the money that we have is sometimes you have money, you want to go for a holiday, somewhere sunny, somewhere nice. It's it's just insane that you can actually charge an African
Mm.
money in terms of visa and have visa requirements for somebody who is just over here to jump on a Ryanair flight to come.
It just
So
comes
this kind
straight.
of barriers, you see, this kind of barriers now it makes it very difficult even for business to thrive. Because now what will happen is, assuming even just the Kingdom of Morocco said, okay, fine, any African who has a resident permit for this region, you can actually come in for tourism for free. So then you see the money that we normally take to Spain and the money that we take to Portugal and to
That's
Bali,
true.
we can go and spend it down there. You know,
That's true.
such kind of barriers. If you remove these barriers, then business becomes very easy. Because that is the main barrier when it comes to you know. Because the moment you remove the border, then there's less paperwork. When you're driving
Yeah.
a car and a Nigerian policeman stops you and it's having a Kenyan license plate, they won't care. They know, oh, this is a Kenyan car, it's allowed. But right now, it's not even very clear. You don't even know how to get there because of the systemic barriers that are there.
That's a very good one. Thank you for that. I was in Kenya recently, but I went through Ethiopia, and it was so challenging. You make a very good point, because even now when I check the flights to maybe Kenya, it's 800 euros, 900 euros. From Kenya to Nigeria, it's almost the same price. So you start to wonder, and the distance isn't that much. So how is it possible that the flight is still so expensive? And comparing, I'd rather come back to Ireland and book back to Nigeria than travel from Kenya to Nigeria. So thank you so much for joining this podcast today. Really appreciated your insights. I think this conversation can go on for hours if I let it go on. So thank you for that. I really do appreciate you joining us today.
Okay, thank you, and bye bye.
Bye bye. Cheers.